Hey everyone, George here with Wine Industry Network. Welcome to another edition of our Win Insider series. And today we have Ashley DuBois Leonard, who is the CEO and founder of InnoVint, here to join us. Hi, Ashley.
Hey, George.
How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. I have a million things I want to talk to you about. I like to get into. Well, I should go talk to the audience for a second. So you guys have been watching these. Sometimes I know the people pretty well, sometimes not so well. And this is one of those times we really haven't spent a lot of time together. We don't, so this is kind of a cool chance for me to get to know you a little bit better and obviously learn about InnoVint. So let's start with your journey into wine. I want to hear a little bit about how you actually wound up, getting involved in the wine industry. Is that something you grew up with or something you fell in love with? Tell me.
Yeah. I actually just watched another interview of yours, George, and saw that you did not grow up with wine. I as well did not grow up with wine in my life. My parents were not quality, I would say quality wine drinkers. They enjoyed it, but I wasn't exposed to it, at a young age. And after high school, I ended up at UC Davis and was interested in pursuing a technical degree. I was always just a science geek and I wanted to do something in the sciences. And I found that viticulture enology at UC Davis was a very complex integrated degree, and the complementary nature of the wine industry, both like the technical foundation that you develop there, also with the beautiful artistic side of it, really attracted me and seemed to fit my yin and yang as well. So fell into it at UC Davis and was like, I think winemaking is my destiny. And, spent a couple years up front lugging hoses around after my degree, doing internships here and there, and found myself as a winemaker and then a director of operations and then a general manager for smaller boutique wineries. So that's how I ended up in it, was through UC Davis's program, and then just organically grew from there.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. Where did you grow up?
The Bay Area, so Redwood
Okay.
City area, kind of like 30 minutes south of San Francisco.
Okay, so you've always been kind of close to wine industry, close to wine, the wine region, wine country.
Mhm.
So now you're making wine, or now you're general manager. So you kind of graduated through. Now you're in the business of wine. Um, what did you like about that?
I loved it. I loved having my hands in so many different aspects of the business. And now looking back, I mean, that was 20 years ago. I value that exposure so much. I mean, I was in my early 20s and I was working with the on-site bookkeeper, looking at QuickBooks, trying to understand what a P&L is when I was like 22 years old. I was working with compliance, of course. At one point, we were making our wine at a custom crush facility down the street. So I was exposed to that model and what that revenue channel looked like. And I had to open the tasting room and do hospitality, which I'd never done before, and put together the marketing plan and do ride-alongs with our broker and market. I mean, I was exposed to everything.
Yeah.
So now, what I do for InnoVint, there's so much exposure that I got there early that helped me kind of set the path forward with this company.
It's funny. I was having this conversation with someone that I interviewed with the other day. So I started a very small winery. It was like 700 cases a year.
Yeah.
And when you work at a small property like that, and this, it's like you just work on whatever needs to get worked on, right? So obviously during harvest, you're down there doing, the punch downs or pump overs or whatever, mostly just cleaning stuff, right? That's how I had to mostly clean things. I was brand, I was new to the industry. And then of course the tasting room, when we bottled, it was like, we didn't have like a bottling line. We had like a little rotator filler, where he was like
Oh
maybe a
yeah.
6 bottle version. So you work somewhere on the line, and then you get out in the vineyard, and help prune and do repairs. And honestly, it was like, and then as I progressed later in my career, it was like the best training, because it's like fast forward a bunch of years later, I worked for Jim Beam when Jim Beam had a wine division, and I was part of the marketing team. But I was so grateful for all those years at the little winery, because I just knew enough to be dangerous no matter what part of, the winery I was in, including compliance and
Yeah.
dealing with the books and things like that. So, was that when you started to get this idea of we need a better solution? There's got to be a better way. What was the seeds for what became InnoVint?
Yeah. So not at that time. Not at
Okay.
that time. I didn't think, oh, I'm going to spin up a software company because there's
Right,
so
right.
much opportunity here. No. So I was in my mid 20s. I'd worked for a couple wineries in the GM role and thought, I'm living in Silicon Valley. I was in the Santa Cruz Mountains at that
Okay.
time.
Beautiful. I love it down there. It's
Oh,
awesome.
I miss it, honestly. It's
Yeah.
so beautiful. The wines are great. Yeah. But I said, man, I have a lot of friends that are working in Silicon Valley tech. That looks really exciting and really fun. And back to what attracted me to the wine industry was this like very technical side of things. I said, I wonder if I should like just expose myself to a different industry for a bit. I've
Yeah.
always been in wine. Maybe there's something there for me.
Well,
So
people were making money too, right? So you had to like,
there's
that would have got me
there's
motivated. I'd be like, listen, I need to get in on this money thing because at that point you already realize wine and making a lot of money doesn't really go hand in hand. It's like a little bit of a trade-off sometimes, right? Your lifestyle and wine. All right, so go back to your story. I want to hear your story.
especially for like a growing brand, right? Like a
Yeah.
small growing brand, you know that, George. You just said
Yeah.
you had experience too doing that. So yeah, so it was also just being a part of like a larger collaborative industry because I was working in a trailer by myself on a mountain at like 24. I was like, let's just try something new. So I worked for actually an IT infrastructure consulting firm of all things, doing marketing and events for them. And one of my job duties was running this large technology conference where in 2008, 2009, I was exposed to what modern software was doing for other industries. And I was studying, it was right at the time when all demographics started to adopt these things, these
Yeah.
smartphones, right? It was like
Yeah.
right at that point where all of a sudden you could access so much more information on a phone and so much more of your work information on a phone. You could access email, and these large corporate companies, the Apples, the Facebooks, were allowing their employees to work from anywhere because technology had matured so much where that was accessible.
Yeah.
So I had this epiphany with my actually then boyfriend, now husband, where we were just kind of brainstorming business ideas one day in 2012, 2013 or so. And I was like, man, it would be really cool if someone built better software for the wine industry. I had like then reflecting back on my early experience of I'd used the DTC solutions at the time, the e-com solutions, which are all, clunky. It was a time when just technology wasn't anywhere where it was today. So it's
Right.
understandable, but I thought, man, there's so much happening in the software world right now for other industries, and no one's really touching wine, definitely not touching winemaking and
Yeah.
trying to help winemakers improve their lives. And so thinking through these like digital mobile workflows, winemakers shouldn't be sitting behind their desk all the time. And most winemakers were because they
Yeah.
had to be compliant with the TTB, with all the volume moving gains and losses, tax classes, all that happens. Like you have to have records of that
Yeah.
stuff. So they were spending all their time in these on-premise legacy databases in Excel, and they weren't able to do what they wanted. So it was this epiphany of, what if I started a software company? And this was
Yeah.
now 11 years ago. What if I did this? Because I understand winemaking very well. And I had contacts in software then. I said, what if I partnered with a co-founder that knew how to start software companies?
Yeah.
And that's how InnoVint came to be.
Now was that your cousin? I was listening to another interview you did. So that's your cousin you went to, right?
Yes, it was. Yep.
It's funny. I was thinking like as you were talking about that, thinking about some of the winemakers I work with, and even the spreadsheets was sort of like that was in, even able to have like Excel, like wasn't that hadn't been around that long. You know what I mean? It was like it was all sort of new.
Yeah.
But it was terribly cumbersome, to work with that. So I'm super curious. I'm just going to dive into this with you. So you call your cousin, or you sit down with your cousin and you start laying out this idea. Um, you had to go start laying it out. You had to like start building out the framework of what it could do. Like how long did it take from the time you had that conversation to where you actually had something to launch? And I know that whatever that looked like is very different than it is today. But tell me a little bit about that time.
Yeah, so our first meeting was over drinks in San Francisco where he was working, and I said, "This is the functionality I think we need to build." And he did his research that night and came back and said, "I think there's a real opportunity here. No one's really touching this." So to answer your question, from that impetus, that idea to actually having a product that's being tested with wineries, that was probably about 9 months.
Okay.
And in that amount of time, we brought on two other team members. So he was my kind of co-founder, CTO. We brought in a front-end developer and a designer. So I was the only one saying, this is what the product should do, and this is how I think it should work. And I had three partners for about 2 years that were just
Okay.
developing the product with me.
Okay.
So we had like a proof of concept, a mobile app that we brought around to wineries and said, what if you could do all this on the phone and it looked like this?
Yeah.
And we got some really impactful alpha beta partners that way, like Thomas Brown's wineries came on board super, super early. Outpost, Tamber Bay, Mending Wall, those guys.
Yeah.
Hall Wines and Napa came on very early. They could see the vision there. So we got some pretty great partners up front, which really helped us build that like reputation and clout early.
Was it hard for you to close those early guys? I mean, you're basically just giving it to them for free at that point, or how did you roll it out, right? It's like, hey, I need someone to test this out.
They were into it. I mean, you find those, they sometimes call them bleeding edge. You know, they're just like leaning into what's next and what's new. You kind of find those that are at the cutting edge of things, and they're into it. I mean, yes, we didn't sell them the product until it was a working product that could support them at least compliantly. But they were on board. I mean, like they were like, we will pay for this. When you deliver this vision, like absolutely, this makes so much sense for us.
So, were you nervous? Like how nervous were you when you first started? Because you're investing your time and probably investing some money. Were you able to work at the same time as you were doing this? Like, tell me about your life at that point.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my confidence has come a long way. Let's just say it's been, yes, absolutely. I was nervous every single day.
Yeah.
Just because up front, I mean, 11 years ago, going to a winemaker and saying, hey, would you let your staff use their personal phone or a mobile device in the cellar? I got a lot of pushback of like, you're crazy to think that
Yeah.
we would let technology come in the cellar, a wet, sticky environment. Like, no way.
Yeah.
So you have to have endurance and be able to push through those times and know that like, nope, like this is worth it. I just like truly, truly believe that this is going to change the game for the
Yeah.
industry to get over those hurdles, because there is a lot of pushback up front.
I think for like people that haven't done something like you've done, and kind of reminds me of when I started Wine Industry Network. So I had a whole career on the winery side of things and it was very good, and then I mentioned Jim Beam working for the corporate wine world. So I've sort of spent some time on the big family-owned wine side, like Corbel, and I worked for the Tolato family. And
Yeah.
then with Beam, it was the corporate side, and you're trying to deal, take care of your shareholders. It's a very different mentality. And so for me, when I decided to go off, it wasn't so much about I had this great idea as much as I felt like I was like in my late 30s and we'd gone through another acquisition. And I've told this story before. And I had and some of the people that were older than me at that point, maybe like around my age now, so my late 50s, were getting, cut loose because there were two of them, right? And they were like, corporate guys, like tend to lead to the younger version. And I just remember like having this thought of having to sit across from like being a 50-something-year-old, having to sit across the table from a 30-something-year-old version of me doing a performance review, and the guy saying, hey, George, you know what? We love you, man. You've done a great job, but, it's time to move on, or, something like just scared me. So when I went off, and then had this idea of creating this almost like an association for vendors where we do a lot of direct marketing on their behalf, and then it evolved into the other things. But those early years are very scary. And
Yeah.
I would like wake up sweating like sometimes and just be like, oh my God, like, is this gonna work? And then something starts to grab a gear. In the beginning, though, it's hard because you don't really, you're not really, you think it might work and you think it's a good idea, but you got to get people to give you a chance,
Yeah.
and
I remember
that's,
when you launched. I remember when
yeah,
your network launched, and and you have to develop, like for what I did and what you did, you have to develop up to a certain like critical mass in order to be considered legitimate. Like in
yeah.
this industry, it requires that kind of trust and clout, and like you just have to get to a certain point, and it's so hard to get there. Like what you just said is so true. And my hat goes off to you, because starting a media company like you did is, there was opportunity, but it's never easy.
Oh,
Like
it's brutal,
I just
man.
so
Yeah.
appreciate what you've done.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, no, it's like I think a lot of it, a lot of the reasons that people gave me chances, this guy had been around for a while already, so they kind of knew me, and I was very involved in the associations.
Hmm.
So so I'm grateful for those folks. But just getting back to your situation, people don't realize being your own boss is great, but it's not for everybody
Mm-hmm.
because you're working all the time and, I mean, you're just out there. So,
Yeah.
so let's get back to it. So now you're out there, your launch what did you launch? What like initially, what was, do you have, because you didn't have all the bells and whistles you have now, right? What did you start with when you rolled it out?
We had to have the engine. We knew that we needed to get to what's called a minimum viable product. So like our MVP, our minimum viable product, was to deliver the 5120 TTB report, the 702 report,
Yep.
which tracks all the alcohol produced basically under a bond.
Yeah.
So we said, if we can do that, and in order to do that accurately and correctly, you really have to model winemaking workflow from grape to bottle, like
Yeah.
in a very complex way for software, honestly. Like especially back then, it was very hard to develop liquid management software with the compliance requirements of that. So the splitting of lots and the blending of lots and tracking the appellations and the vintage varietal all accurately really required us to do a ton of upfront work before we launched the product. So that's why it took us about 9 months to get this initial product to market. It had to do the 5120 report for TTB, back then 702, and
Yeah.
match that daily winemaking workflow to do that.
And you had to make it, you said this in the other interview. I'm stealing some of the questions or some of your answers. You said something that really struck a chord with me. It's like, we have to make this easy to use.
Yes.
We
Yeah.
can't make it like, we can't give these guys a tool where they're like, this is too much. I just want to go back to writing it down in my spreadsheet.
Yeah. Yep. Intuitive was our foundation up front. Like it, because if you look at the folks that are getting data into these systems, they're not super tech savvy. They don't come from software, they're not even encouraged to use software products back then.
Yeah.
It had to have this aha moment very quickly for them to say, you know what, I would adopt this. You know what, I would try this. Like it needed to just model the work they were already doing as close as possible. So that was essential because it's garbage in, garbage out. You can't
Yeah.
run this like TTB report if your team on the ground isn't using it every day correctly.
Yeah. So then was that like, so you're tracking everything and then would that incorporate like work orders at that point? Was that sort of like that was built in, I'm sure, from the very beginning as well?
It was built in from the very beginning. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we knew that we wanted to make work assignment easy and seamless and be able to have that accessibility anywhere. So,
Yeah.
be able to receive work on a mobile device, an iPad, a phone, be able to complete, something as simple as a bricks and temp reading or a Punchdown when
Yeah.
you're in harvest, and be able to click submit and have that instantly report in real time back to the winemaker or whoever's looking at it elsewhere. And then you add a lot of complexity on top of that, but like that workflow of assignment and completion needed to be seamless as well.
One of the other features that I think is really great is the costing feature, right?
Mhm.
Because costing is
Huge.
it can be so overwhelming for people. They don't, most of wineries don't do it right. They're just like writing checks and expensing things out. That had to be a little bit challenging. Was that part of the beginning package or did that come along a little bit later?
That came along a little bit later. So
Yeah.
that was the next kind of like revolution of InnoVint. We did production, like making of wine, and then some vineyard tracking components too before that to kind of lead in from the vineyard more efficiently and effectively to the cellar. And then it was this, we got to do costing because it overlays the daily activity and volume flow perfectly. So if
Yep.
you're using InnoVint and you want to know your true costs of what it takes to make each of those bottles of wine, it has to follow winemaking software. It
Yeah.
just does. Like it's almost impossible to do in Excel. So we did that. Gosh, how long has it been? Maybe if InnoVint's been around 11 years, maybe 7 years ago,
Okay.
we delivered costing. And that's been a huge game changer for us. It's so essential. I mean, we often sell to CFOs first now because they know the importance of doing this right. And they know if they get the right winemaking software, then they'll get the information that they need out to have proper costing.
Yeah. I mean, just to give you those insights into like what's driving the cost of goods on this, on this bottle, right? And now, are you able to like for your customers, and you've got a lot of people that are using the platform now to like benchmark, like, hey, how are my costing percentages versus people that are of similar size? Is that part of what you're able to, I know you can do it, but is that something you offer to your customers?
We're working on offering a benchmarking service like that.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's good.
It's really good. The industry needs it. The industry needs it very badly, I would say. And I'd say the most education that we do is around costing best practice. Like you said, George, most wineries don't do this correctly or
Yeah,
don't really have the tools to do it correctly or the knowledge to do it correctly. So we're helping at minimum educate them on like, this is what proper cost accounting looks like. And
yeah,
then making sure that innovative costing is accurate, because then once we can confirm the accuracy, then we can start benchmarking customers against and like provide that holistic value to the
I
industry.
I think that's going to be an awesome addition because, just from personal experience, like you just don't know. You kind of don't. Am I paying more than it? Is this costing me more than everybody else? Am I being smart here, or where am I, or where can I make, or more importantly, given the times that we're in right now, it's like, where can I save a buck, right? If I could save 50
Yeah.
cents a bottle, if I could save, it's, 50 cents a bottle doesn't seem like much,
Mm-hmm.
but if you know your business, it actually means a lot, right?
I had a conversation yesterday. I was on a sales call with my team member, and the winery came to us and said, I'm talking to you guys. I'm on a different system, but I'm talking to you guys because more than ever before, I need to understand what these inflationary costs are going to do to my cost of goods.
Yeah,
And it is so to your point, it is like it has just become more and more and more and more and more important as wineries
yeah,
have needed to focus on efficiency, like not want, but like need to be lean and efficient in order to survive and thrive. I mean, George, I read your article this morning about, in these challenging times, what it takes for a winery to thrive. They've got to adapt. They've have to adopt better systems, better solutions. They have to become more efficient across their entire business. So
yeah.
we're doing a lot of that education too right now.
No, we'll talk more about this, but um, the you have to be, like you said, willing to like just accept this is the situation we have. It's not going to change. And
Yeah.
I really do think that when we look back on this, I've said this a couple of times, we look back on these times, and I don't know if it's going to be a year from now or 2 years from now or 3 years from now, God forbid. But I think that there will be a time when as an industry, we'll look back at these times and be quite proud of what we did to get through it. And I think to your point, it's like it's all about you have to embrace change. You just have, because I say this again a lot. I don't know exactly. There is no one lever you're going to pull. It's going to make a big difference, whether at the winery or vineyard level or at the industry level. It's going to be a combination of things. And I'm not sure what all those are, but I know for sure that the wrong to do is keep doing what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do that. Whatever
Yeah.
that is, don't do that. Not completely anyway.
Yeah.
So tell me little bit about your on a day to day. Like, are you mainly like focused on business development? I know that you've got a great footprint here, but is it just about like expanding new markets, expanding it to other countries, or what percentage of your time doing that versus like running the business and getting involved with the next version of InnoVint?
I mean, it's all the above. You kind of hit on the big things that I do. It's looking at the next 5 to 10 years and what that landscape looks like. It's looking at the next 2 to 3 years, what that landscape looks like, and staying ahead of the game. We've always said that we're top innovators in our space. So to be able to still hold that ground, you have to be thinking that far out because
Yeah,
technology moves quick. And then, just operating the business day over day takes a lot of work supporting the different departments in InnoVint. And believe it or not, majority of the wineries still in the United States, there are on Excel and paper and not on any solution like InnoVint yet. So there's still a tremendous amount of opportunity, which keeps me engaged, 11 years in.
yeah,
Um, to your point of, it's this slow rolling boulder that we're pushing up a hill. We're still pushing it. And, we had the pandemic happen, which kind of shook up our industry. And I think overall helped us a bit, like during that time, just change and evolve. And now we're at another sort of impetus, high impact point in the market in our industry where like we're gonna have to adapt and change again a bit here to survive
yeah.
and thrive with the competition that we have and everything that's going on.
Do you so you launched here in your backyard, I suspect, right? So it was like pretty much like local Sonoma, Napa,
Yep.
uh, Santa Cruz Mountains. I'd imagine the majority of your business is in California, right? Because that's the majority of the businesses. Do you do a lot of business like outside of, let's say, California, Washington, Oregon?
We do. You'd be shocked. I mean, every state has a winery now,
Yeah, yeah.
and I don't know the exact count off the top of my head is how many of the 50 states we're in, but I guess it's probably at least 35 or 40. I mean,
Wow.
we actually had a Nebraska winery right in this morning. We're like, "Ha, Nebraska!" It's like, look at that. So, yeah, it just keeps growing and evolving, and I'd say probably 7-8% of our customer base is international as well. And that's all come primarily through word of mouth. We've had some partners here and there, but organic growth is kind of the name of the game there. And like
Yeah.
with two of the largest wineries in Australia that are using it for their million plus production, operations. So
When you do something like that, for a winery in Australia, I imagine I don't know this, but I imagine there's some sort of compliance reporting that they have to do as well. So did you have to go back in and reconfigure the? I mean, gathering the same data, right? You just need to spit it out in a different way. Was that difficult?
exactly, exactly. So every country has different levels and complexity of compliance around that. Some are like very lean. Like Australia is actually not that difficult to approve or to satisfy, I would say. It is just kind of manipulating exports in a way that works for them. Some countries like Spain have like 15 reports they have to deliver to
Oh
different
no.
agencies every month. So and everything in between. So it's just making sure that you can get the data out that you need in the format that you need, and we kind of check that box for them.
Yeah.
And again, every country is just different.
Do you have like, are there people that do what you, I know there's people that do what you do internationally, but is there any like major players internationally that they kind of dominate Spain or they dominate Italy, or is it kind of, because I would imagine if I'm having to crank out 50 type of, some odd reports a month, I need help. Like I don't want to be doing that on a spreadsheet. So what's the competitive environment look like internationally?
There's no one other international player that we compete with or,
Okay.
are intimidated by in the future. There's all these tiny solutions that just cater to that market.
Yeah.
So there's a couple in Spain that are, pretty cost effective, that are not intuitive and simple and really effective for the business, but they do that compliance report for this agency in a way that
Yeah.
the winery needs. So, there's these like little guys around the world, but no one that really has like international impact.
So I wanted to ask you, you start picking up customers in Texas and Virginia and New York and things. So have you spent some lot like time in these different markets and getting to, so I, so for me, we were unsuccessful, but we launched a trade show and conference, in Washington, D.C. for a few years. And we
Mm.
just, I thought it was going to be, something that could be great just because it was a great city and it was sort of centrally located, but we had a hard time getting people to come into DC. It's so expensive, and I should have thought about that. Um, but what was cool is like forced me to really get to know those regions and the leaders within those regions. And I loved it. I thought it was great, like getting to visit these wineries, like I said, in Virginia or the Carolinas and Maryland, and it was really eye-opening for me too, because I think early on in my career, I was sort of guilty of thinking like the wine industry sort of, started and ended here in the North Coast.
Yeah.
And then I got, more experience in the Central Coast, which was great. But I was really surprised at the level of passion and the quality of the wines, the quality of the people,
Yeah.
in those other regions. Um, they're the same, but they're a little bit different. What's that been like for you as you've gotten to know different people throughout the different wine regions across the country?
I totally agree. It has been so fun and
Yeah,
so eye-opening, and they have so much pride. They all
yeah,
have their own personality,
yeah,
but they take so much pride in their own region and, belief that their wine is truly something special. And it is. They're all unique in their own way. And it also sheds light on how challenging these growing environments are. That
yeah.
here on the West Coast, man, it's a walk in the park. If a winemaker, like there's a couple winemakers I know that worked in Michigan, and they're like, whoa, like the challenges there are just so incredibly different. So to
Yeah.
produce a quality product in like Utah or Idaho or Michigan, you have just a completely different set of challenges. So I think that also drives that like sense of pride that they're able to accomplish, quality product in these regions that are just more difficult. So it's been really interesting to get to know them. meaning the region, and get to know the main players and what they're really trying to do with their market and their brand.
Yeah, I loved it too. I just like it was like they're not giant chateaus or anything either. Like they're just more like it's very like low key. And in a lot of ways, I think what they continue to do right, which I think we struggle with in here, especially in the North Coast. I wouldn't lump in like the Central Coast guys. It's very they keep it fun. They keep wine fun. They
Mhm.
just anecdotally from conversations that I have, I know they're not having the same sort of struggles that we are out here because they have such great backyard support.
Yeah.
A lot of the revenue is event driven, so there's always something going on at these
Yeah.
wineries, food trucks and music, and it's just a party. And and they're doing wine slushies, like things that I would go like, kind of like, go like, what? Like, what are you doing? And now
Yeah.
it's like the older I get, I think you really do get a little smarter sometimes. But I go, you know what? With things I would like think would be ridiculous, like, I'm going, that's a pretty good idea. We should be making wine a little bit more, a little more fun,
Yeah.
and maybe take a page out of the books of some of these, lesser known regions, because from a pure business perspective, I grew up in New Jersey. I think it's like 45 wineries or 50 wineries in New Jersey, and they're just like the ones I described, having fun every weekend. But they've got a lot of consumers right in their backyard, and we got
Yeah.
50 wineries in Dry Creek Valley. You know what I mean? It's from a
Yeah.
business perspective, they can do pretty well.
Totally. And I've seen some pretty impressive like blueberry wine producers that'll sell through 25,000 cases direct through their
Yeah,
site every
yeah,
year. And they have such incredible following. People love the wine. To your point of like we should take notes. How do we like when you have a demographic and you have a unique offering and a location, like yes, there is hopefully the North Coast and a lot of other West Coast regions are learning.
yeah. It may be a bit of painful for us to make some of the changes, maybe almost impossible because their wines are more affordable. They're not having a hard time attracting younger people the same way that we are, and yeah, it drives me crazy. But I'm happy for those regions,
Yeah.
and I can hope that they continue to flourish. Good segue to like it's challenging times right now for industry. Like, everybody knows that. Does does that impact your business much? I mean, have you noticed an impact?
We only noticed an impact like from our customer base from those wineries that are perhaps not operating as healthy as they could be.
Okay.
Other than that, like if we see just generally speaking, if wineries are adopting kind of modern technology to help run their business across like back office, front office, DTC solutions, if they're probably pretty savvy at business, if they know
Yeah.
that they need to make these investments. So it does impact our business, but generally speaking, in a positive way, because
Yeah.
wineries are kind of realizing that this is a necessity now to be able to run operational platforms like InnoVint, to be able to run a lean operation. You can't just add people anymore. The cost is too high. You need to, be truly efficient and understand your costs associated with producing your wine and be able to capitalize your overhead. How much is your building costing you if you have a beautiful on-site location? Just all that is becoming so much more important.
Yeah, I was thinking that, because there's certain industries that, within our industry that are you need no matter what, like compliance as an example, right? If I was going to go back and do this all over again and for just for the money, I would have started a compliance company, 30 years ago because it's like nobody wants to do it, but you have to do it. And I feel like what you've built is so smart because it's also become a necessity. And with times like this, where like, which is a very different story from my, my barrel, my bottle, my tank guys, who, or anybody who's making equipment that requires a capital investments. Everyone's trying to figure out how do I right size my business to be able to, work my way through this. But what
Yeah.
you have is a solution to like, hey, you need to be more efficient. This will help you be more efficient. This will save you money over time. What you have is not an expense. It's like really, it's an investment, right? It's an investment in your business, and it's nice to be able to help because you're really in a lot of ways you're out there helping these wineries.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. I mean, we have the just one ROI piece is just time saved
Yeah.
from not using a system to using InnoVint is like night and day for these folks. I mean, I think Gloria Ferrer recently said that they used to, it would take 3 people 2 days in order to complete their monthly reporting. Now it's one account in 15 minutes. So it's just like those types of investments are paying off in dividends.
Yeah, think about that. That's times, times 12, times, how
Yeah.
many years? I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Maybe you probably can't talk about this, but there's got to be a next iteration of InnoVint. Like because the other thing about what you're doing is anytime anybody grabs, any kind of a gear, people are looking at you and how they can come after you and kind of get into your space and compete with you. So
Mhm.
you're constantly having to outdo yourself, right? I mean, is that something is just a constant way of thinking like, okay, what's next? How can we make this better?
Yeah. Yeah. So we set a new North Star, maybe 3 years ago when we kind of shifted our ethos and what we do from like being best in class production software to
Yeah,
like, wait a second, like we're doing a lot more than just helping production run effectively here. Like we're helping wineries run a better business. So our North Star as a company and our mission is to help wineries thrive and run best in class businesses, which has been an issue in this industry,
yeah,
especially now that we're seeing kind of a plateau of growth. Like now what? Like you really have to run a strong, healthy business. So that's our North Star when we look at product development, when we look at how we continue to add value to this industry. And I think we're the only ones really looking at it through that lens of
yeah,
like, let's just do what's best for our customers. Like
yeah,
truly, let's listen to them and do what's best and also spin it in a way that like like I said, I spent a lot of time thinking a couple years out, like where should the product be? Where should we be 3 years from now? Where like we're a game-changing solution
yeah.
across this industry as like the foundational operating system. So I think as long as we keep that in mind, we'll stay ahead of the curve and keep impressing our customers with the value that we're able to bring them.
Well, and I think, being able to get those CFOs on board, right? The folks that pay attention to the money and have them go, hey, this is great.
Yeah.
What if we're able to integrate this into other components of the business? And because you tackle the hardest part. I mean, I know I'm not saying that the other parts are easy, but I mean, tackling production and costing
Yeah.
is brutal. So you
Yeah.
did that.
Yeah.
I just think the idea of we try to have this sort of a mindset is like to like really concisely summarize like our mindset is like we're here to help. So if you're a vendor, we want to help, raise awareness for your products or services. If you're a winer or vineyard guy, you're looking to make a purchase, we want to help you make better purchasing decisions if you need a job or whatever it is. And I think
Yep.
that if you kind of let that be your guiding light, things will fall into place.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
how much of I'm sorry, I'm talking all about the business here, and like I'm not really getting too much personal stuff, but I'm really curious. I love this part of it of our industry. You've got to have a lot of, I guess, some sort of a mechanism for feedback from your customers, right? So because they're the ones that are using it. Do they play a big part in helping drive you in the, whatever direction that you're heading?
Absolutely. Yes, big time. And we do an all hands quarterly business review every quarter, and we have that tomorrow morning with our entire team. And I have my customer success team come and present just that, saying,
Okay.
here's all of the tickets that have been, written in by our customers. Here's the products that they're requesting or the functionality that they'd like improved upon. And we're constantly, the product team and the customer success team and support team are constantly working together on that.
Yeah.
And that's sort of that like short-term roadmap of what do our customers need? And the interesting thing about this industry is it's very seasonal and it's
Yeah.
always been a challenge. Like that's probably our biggest product challenge is, okay, if wineries need something for harvest, which is the most intensive time to
Yeah.
operate, we need to get that thing out by July 1st to be able to train them effectively, get everyone on board, announce it, do the go to market, right? So we're constantly fighting that every year, that like
Yeah.
cyclical schedule from a product perspective. But yes, our customers definitely help us inform product improvements and evolutions of like current functionality.
It's funny. It's like the earliest technology solutions that we had back my early days in the wine industry, and there were some solutions out there. I don't want to name any names, but
Mhm.
they didn't do any of that. There was no like, it was like, this is the system. This is the way it works. It's very complicated. man, we none too, too bad, so sad, and just an unwillingness to change.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of, this is system, and you need to work with it. So it's nice to hear that, because to me, that's the key to sustainability, right? Or long-term growth is having that partnership mentality with your customers and
Yeah.
giving them a voice, right? Because they're the ones that are using it every day. I think that's great. Do
Yeah.
you actually have do you ever do like formal surveys and things like that with your members as well, or your customers?
Yeah, we're actually this summer we're doing a bunch of road shows in market where we're
Okay.
inviting our customers to come, and it is a product roadshow. It
Yeah.
is showing them like main aspects of the product that they may not know exist or may not be using right. So we definitely like solicit feedback that way. And then I don't know if you've heard of Net Promoter Score and NPS score, but that's basically polling your audience on how likely they are to recommend your solution to their friends
Okay.
and neighbors. And we have like a world-class score there across our customer base. So, and in we survey them, I think, every 6 months on that. And we get a lot of product feedback that way too, where they'll say, oh, I think it's great. And I also love to see this coming out in the future.
Yeah.
And so we just have a huge database of all the feedback we've gotten from our customers.
Where are you going? Where's the road show going to take you? It's like you're going on tour.
I just talked with my head of marketing about it. A couple in Napa Sonoma. We're going to Willamette Valley. We're going to maybe Temecula. We're like finalizing the locations right
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
So, and then Texas perhaps, and then perhaps Virginia
yeah.
and some other East Coast spots, Finger Lakes. So, yeah,
That'll be fun though.
it will be fun. Yeah,
That's cool. Hey, you know what I saw also? This is totally switching gears. Did a little volleyball coaching.
I did.
That's
Yep.
cool. Did you play volleyball in high school or college or something, or how'd you want to be the coach?
Yeah, I played through high school, then I played club at UC Davis.
Okay.
And then I played competitive adult ball in the Bay Area through my 20s, and then coached at Saratoga High School with a girlfriend, which is like boys and girls at Saratoga High. That was an experience. And then I kept playing. I got married, had two kids, and then ruptured my Achilles like
Ah,
2 years ago now, which sidelined me. And now I'm like, I don't know. I'm in my 40s now. Is this like maybe that's the sign to pull the plug on the sport? I don't.
that's a tough one. Did you do that playing volleyball, or just you did?
I
Oh
went
man.
back after 7 years. I had kids. I was like, okay, I'm gonna get back to it. First night back indoor, just took a lunge the wrong way and ruptured it. And
Oh man,
hard
that's a
recovery.
tough one. That's a tough one to overcome too.
Yeah.
Would they have you in a boot or something? Did you have to wear a boot?
Surgery, boot for 6 weeks, non-weight bearing. I was in those little scooters for a while.
Yeah.
Once I could travel, kind of scooting around the valley, you know.
You know what? I did a lot of like racquetball and things like that when I mean, I did traditional sports, but played a lot of racquetball and like all through my 20s. And then it just like wrenched my back, and like I
Mm.
just give me sciatica. And then just when I was in my 40s, I kind of had to like stop, and I just started playing more golf.
Oh yeah, golf's great though. I love
Yeah,
golf.
golf's great.
That's fun.
Golf lets you still be competitive. I'm a competitive person, so it's like
Yeah,
it sort of feeds that.
definitely.
Well, I don't want to take too much of your time, but I wanted to. I've already taken a lot of your time, but I'll take too much more of your time. We talked a little bit about how tough it is out there, and what are your thoughts on like what we're doing, or what you think as an industry? And again, I know that there's different other wine regions, outside of California that I think are doing okay, but certainly here in California, Northern California in particular, we're struggling a little bit. And what thoughts do you have around that, and maybe what we should be thinking about doing differently?
Yeah, I think you kind of start with the top of the business pyramid, which is really profitability. Like, how do you get to profitability and maximizing margins and profitability? And then you go from there and you look at like the two sides of the business. We either need to sell more wine or we need to like cost control, become efficient, and really both.
Yeah,
And from there, you start to analyze these wine businesses. And I think in general, the industry has been underserved for a long time by great best practice accountants, like bookkeepers and finance and compliance, like you mentioned earlier.
yeah,
And those are like, without the finance piece of being able to take a wine business and say, okay, here's how we're going to make money, guys. Like you really need to take a lens to every single business that way. And what's changed just the past few years is that inflection point of there's a lot of competition out there now, and you
Yeah.
can no longer sit back on your heels and just do what you've been doing. Whether you're a winemaker that's been shuffling paper for 30 years, like you can't do that anymore. Or whether you're a DTC manager and you don't have a great system. Gosh, I was talking to a winery recently that has a credit card processor that keeps crashing on them in their tasting room, and they lose sales all the time in their tasting room. And I was like,
Yeah.
you can't operate that way, you know? It's like I'm shouting at rooftops. You can't do that.
Right.
So just across the business, like you've got to tighten down your bolts, like
Yeah.
tighten up the ship. And that's the first step, really. And I think naturally there'll be some shakeout and consolidation of brands and loss of brands that perhaps maybe shouldn't be viable in the first place.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to be healthier because of it in the long term. I really do.
I do too. I think you're spot on. It's funny. I have this a common question, right? Just because for
Mhm.
the obvious reasons, but you're the first person that's really spoke to the idea that make sure the business is operating right. Like we're operating like a business that's here to make money. And to a degree, I think there's a lot of people that got into this industry that for the lifestyle, I
Yeah.
love why, I've had so many of these conversations. I know you have too. Like, so what made you do this? She's like, you know what? I just loved wine, and I was doing this or I was doing that, and we had visited Sonoma County or we visited Napa, and I said, this is what I want to do. And they get into it for, going to call them dream chasers, right? Which is great. And
Hmm.
they want to chase this wine industry dream. And for the ones that got in at the right time, 25 years ago, was a good time to get in, and everyone sort of benefited from it. And even I'm guilty of, like, when you're growing every year, you don't worry about the little, dollars here, dollars there until you have to.
Hmm.
And that's not so much fun. But you're the first person who really talked about, okay, first things first, where are you spending your money? And are you spending your money the right way?
Yep.
And let the business, the business of wine help make those decisions about how much should I be producing, what should I be producing, just taking a closer look at how you operate. And I think once you have that, then you're in the position to do the part two, which is, okay, we got to sell, because you do have most of these guys have to sell more wine.
Hmm.
Um, how do we do that? How do we better engage with the customers we already have? What's our plan for acquiring new customers? Is our channel strategy right? Are we smart to be 95% direct and have no wholesale, or do we have to find a better balance? So, I like what you said, and I agree with you. I think this it's going to be painful, but I think it's going to be, in the long run, it's going to be good for the folks that are able to, get through it. And I think a lot of people that are not going to be here are just they're tired.
Hmm.
Those people
It's
who are
hard
like,
work.
my age or older, it is hard work. People have no idea. Unless you couldn't know. It's not what people who come to visit us think. It's a production,
Yeah.
it's a production company, and it's incredibly competitive. And
Yep.
just the quality of your product isn't enough to make you stand out, because everybody's makes good product. So, um, yeah, well, we'll see what happens. Like I said, I'm hoping that I think this year is going to be rough, and then I'm hoping things sort of settle out a little bit.
That's what I've heard. I've heard 2026 should be our year of stability.
I know we keep telling it, like,
Fingers
I
crossed,
I
but
tell you this funny story. So someone was we were having the same conversation, and I was telling them it was probably like about maybe like 14 or 15 months ago where I started to notice, like, the guys that we work with were cutting back. Got from trade shows. Maybe the guy would get four booths, is getting two, and the guy was getting two is getting one. And it was like I was in denial. I was like, okay, it's going to be fine. And it's an election year. Everything's going to be cool. Once we get through the election, everything will settle down. People are just nervous. Doesn't matter who wins. And then that kind of came and went. And then I was like in depression. So denial, depression. And then it's probably like maybe like late January, maybe after Unified, I just said, you know what? This is acceptance. This is the way it is. We
Mhm.
need to we need to operate a little bit differently. We need to figure out how to help people differently
Yeah.
than we've been doing it. And I think that's sort of like, for the people that are going to survive, that's the mentality that they need to have too. It's just, this is the way it is. Stop thinking about, how it was. And for some of those folks, it might be time to go, you know what? It was been fun, and
Mhm.
time to
Yeah.
retire.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of shakeout like that right now. Like to your point of, if you put Napa on your label 15 years ago, it's sold. You could sell it. And
Yeah.
that's just not the case today. And, There's issues with succession planning now of, is the next generation willing to work as hard as it's going to take to get that brand and keep that brand in market? It's just a different story, a different animal.
I hope so, because I think that the next generation, I think we're really in dire need of the next generation of decision makers to sort of take the helm.
Mm-hmm.
If for no other reason than, like I said, it's not a knock on experience, right? Because experience matters. But sometimes I think younger people, and I'm guilty of this, and I think you're probably mates, when you look back at like some of the things you do, you're like, I can't even believe I did that. You know what I mean? Because had I known how hard it was going to be, I might not have tried this. So, it's like,
Yeah.
so sometimes I think it's good to have those fresh ideas get in a position where they're making decisions, because they're not going to be afraid to try something that somebody with, more experience might go, oh, that'll never work,
It's so true. It's true in every industry, in every profession. Absolutely. You're way
Yeah.
more hungry and eager, and you're just willing to just get in and grind a bit more. And, we need the grinders. We need those
Yeah.
that'll come in and just like see the stickiness through and know that there's a light at the end of that tunnel. As long as you work hard, that we're going to come out. And I mean, this industry has been through a lot of ebbs and flows. We're ebbing and flowing.
Yeah.
Wine is not going anywhere. It is an incredible product. It brings so much happiness to those that enjoy the storytelling component, the authenticity of it, the passion of the people behind it. I mean, that will always persist. So
Yeah.
it's just us from a business standpoint, making sure that those brands and the businesses are run in the most effective way to tell that story and get in front of the right consumers in the right markets. And to your point earlier, there's a lot of resources out there on how to sell wine effectively these days.
Yeah.
Gotta embrace that stuff.
But like you said, you got to be out there. You've got to be okay with out there, grinding it out.
Mm-hmm.
I always say, like, it's not super complicated to be successful in the wine industry. I mean, it's hard, but you have to have a good product.
Yeah.
That's, you have to have a good product.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to be priced within the realm of like reality, right? Whatever that range is. But most importantly, you've got to be okay being out there selling all the time.
Yeah.
You've got to be okay with that, because as soon as you're not there, somebody else is taking your spot on the shelf or on the wine list. And if you're okay with that, you'll be okay.
Yeah.
You'll survive.
I'm asked often, like, oh, do you miss winemaking? Do you think that you'll, start your own brand someday? Do you want to get back into it? And my mind immediately goes to that of like, if I don't have the time to sell it, why would I ever want to make it?
Yeah.
So until that changes and until I'm really motivated to get out there and sell this wine that I'm making, I'm not going to step back into it.
Well, listen, Ash, this has been great. For people that want to learn a little bit more about InnoVint, what should they do?
They can go to our website,
Okay.
InnoVint, INNOVINT.us. And then we also, through the website, you can access our digital community called the Punchdown, where we're trying to bring industry professionals together in a peer-to-peer forum to ask about best practice, whether it be costing like we talked about, or winemaking, or just post equipment for sale. We have a lot of resources there. So
I should have asked you a Punchdown for people that because we didn't talk about that at all, but just in like your own little social. So just give it the quick plug for Punchdown, because I think that's great too.
Yeah. So we started the Punchdown maybe 2 years ago. It is an open, free digital forum for anyone in the wine industry, from back of house to front of house, winemaking, finance, DTC. We have a lot of folks on there, a lot of service providers like compliance professionals that are engaged with each other. The impetus of that for me personally was when I worked in the Santa Cruz Mountains, I felt very isolated from others that made wine like mine in, the Willamette Valley, Sonoma, wherever it was. And I wanted access to them to ask technical questions, to ask business questions. And I just didn't have anywhere to do that. So that's what the Punchdown is. It is a peer-to-peer exchange to be able to engage with folks in this industry.
Yeah, I think that's great, and something that we absolutely needed. Well, listen, thanks again for being with us. I wish you all the luck in the world. Make sure that you let us know when the roadshow kind of comes together, because we will definitely make sure that people know that where you're going to be and when you're going to be there, so they can come meet you in person and get a closer look at what you're rolling out. And thanks everybody in the audience for watching another episode, and make sure you like our YouTube channel, and we will see you all again soon.
Thanks, George. Appreciate it.